Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Hey everybody, today we have another special guest. I laugh. I need to figure out more adjectives to every guest. It's like, they're special, they're great. I don't know what else to say. But what I should have done is, I don't know if I pronounce your last name correctly. I probably should have asked that beforehand.
Okay.
But Paul Oneid, is that right? Oneid. It was kind of close. Paul Oneid, who we kind of like rubbed circles a little bit here and there. And then finally, I think last year we talked at the Arnold for just a few minutes because we were both busy. And then we talked online once, but this is like probably the second time we've actually got to sit down and talk.
Hey, this is one of the reasons why I love podcasts so much. Like it's a great excuse to just sit across from somebody that you respect and have a great conversation about whatever comes up. And the number of people that I've made friends with over an hour and a half conversation, it's awesome. So I'm happy to be here. And you used special properly because I am, like short bus kind of special. So hopefully people don't take too much offense to anything I say on a podcast.
So I don't know a whole lot about your background. Like, I know your businesses and stuff, and I know you were a strength coach, but like, were you doing athletics? How did you get into lifting? I know you power lifted for quite some time.
Yeah.
Like competition wise.
So I got into lifting for basketball, actually. So I played college basketball my freshman year. For people who don't know, I'm like 5'9" and a white person. So a very skilled player, but just didn't have the physicality to compete at that level. And I just fell in love with training. Decided I didn't want to play basketball after my freshman year because I redshirted and knew I wasn't going to play. Then I decided to play football. So I played 2 years of football and unfortunately had to have knee surgery my second year. And it was during the rehab process for that where I really fell in love with lifting. And I was doing my bachelor's degree in kinesiology. Decided at that point, sports performance was where I wanted to take my career. So upon I started working as a personal trainer. I started training some of the football players at our school. And upon graduation, did an internship with Joe DeFranco, did a couple other educational opportunities, and ended up at the University of South Florida with Ron McKeefery and the South Florida Bulls, working with their football, baseball, track, and soccer teams. And it was there where I was introduced to NCAA Division I. So sorry, I should have mentioned I'm Canadian. So I moved from Ottawa, Ontario to Tampa, Florida. And while I was there, as a strength coach, I also did a master's degree in exercise science. Before finishing that degree, I actually got a full-time job to move up to Pittsburgh to Robert Morris University and work with Todd Hammer. So I worked with Todd for 2 years. I did another master's degree in sports management. Because I hadn't finished my first degree, when I finished with Todd, I moved back to Florida and worked at the University of Tampa as their associate director while I finished my second master's degree, and then moved up to Canada to Queen's University and was a head strength and conditioning coach for about a year before I decided to change careers. Worked in the private sector in disability rehabilitation, so working with individuals with mental and physical disabilities trying to return to work. It was during that time when I started coaching online and built my business to the point in 2021 where I was able to go out on my own and do this coaching thing full time. So as far as coaching, I've been coaching since 2007, but in terms of full-time remote coaching, I only went full-time in 2021. Now Master Athletic Performance has myself, my wife, and three other coaches, who work with us. I also run a mentorship program called the MAP Mentorship, where I've worked with 37 coaches on their businesses to try and scale and be able to get that dream career that they've always wanted. I also own Coaches Corner University, which is an education website geared towards providing a postgraduate education in all things coaching. And we're branching out into certification courses as well. So by the end of 2024, we should have between 7 to 10 certification courses in different uh, avenues, whether it be strongman, sleep, online coaching. We have one on women's health and performance, and a whole other number of ones in the works, just to try and provide people with what they need for either recertification or just continuing education. As far as competitions, there was at one point in time when I was very strong. Um,
Me
back
too.
in around, yeah, back in around 2015, 2016, I was ranked in the top 10 all time at 220 and 242. Um, the growth of the sport is pretty crazy, so those numbers don't really hold up, but I've squatted over 800 in competition, totaled 1960 at 242 in knee wraps. And hopefully I'll be competing towards the end of the year this year, but I've taken a couple years off and I competed in a bodybuilding show and did a whole bunch of other things too. So feeling pretty cool. That's my story.
I think that's being a person with drastic sleep issues. I go, damn, you got a lot of energy. Holy shit. That's a lot of stuff. And you were balancing a lot of stuff at the same time.
I wouldn't call it balance at the time. Like I
Oh,
didn't
we're
have
going to
any,
talk about that. I would call
yeah,
it balance.
I didn't have a lot to do. All I was focused on was myself, my career. And when I think back to the times when, doing two master's degrees concurrently, working as a strength coach, all I did was eat, train, coach, sleep, and study. So it was very selfish. Um, Balance wasn't something
Or
I'd
was it?
ever thought about. Pardon?
I said, or was it?
It was pretty selfish.
Well, you weren't you
Listen, I
weren't
don't
you
think
weren't
selfishness is.
impacting anyone else's life. You weren't hurting anyone else's life.
Oh, Chad, this is a philosophical conversation because I don't see selfishness as a bad thing. I
Well,
think
that's what I'm
self,
saying. Like
yeah.
I think I wrote an article once on this, like, because I often say I think everyone should have a period in their life where they go 100% at one thing.
Mhm.
I mean, win, lose, or draw, you're going to learn so much about yourself and you're going to be a better person. So
Yeah.
to me, now we're talking about definition of terms where
Mhm.
a lot of
But it's
people
important.
assume the word selfish is negative. And like you
Yeah.
said, it's not really a bad word. It's not a bad thing.
I think it's a great thing.
And we learn
I
from
think
it.
selfishness is I think selfishness is a virtue. And the reason people associate selfishness with negativity is because they associate being selfish with being hedonistic. Um, Hedonistic, being to be hedonic is to be in pursuit of pleasure. But
Mhm.
that definition does not entail pleasure at the expense of others. And I think that's where the conflation lies. So when you say, I am selfish, you're in pursuit of gains to yourself. That doesn't mean that that is at the expense of other people. And I am a firm believer that you cannot pour from an empty cup. So when I met my wife, our first date was a 4-hour walk through downtown Toronto because it was
Kind
it
of
was
awesome, actually.
it was a great date, but obviously it worked out pretty well for me. But like it was during COVID, so we couldn't go into any restaurants or anything like that. And one of the first things I said to her was, you know, I know a lot of people will say that they will put their partner first, but I won't. Because if I'm not okay, we aren't okay.
Mhm.
And she totally got it. And that's part of the thing that started our relationship off on the right foot, and that I always want her to take care of herself first, because without her being on stable ground, we cannot be on stable ground. And I also can't help her if I'm not on stable ground. So the things that I believe that are selfish, I think coaching is selfish because I get so much joy from coaching. It is a self-motivated endeavor. Um, the work that I do with my mentees is selfish because it fills my cup to no end. Does it benefit other people? Absolutely. But if you take the uh, at the expense of others out of the common definition of selfish, selfishness benefits everybody. Because if you're taking care of yourself and I'm taking care of myself and Johnny's taking care of himself and Susie's taking care of herself, think about all the drains on the system that are completely eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
Think about all the social problems that are completely eliminated. And we can take this conversation further, and that some people are not able to take care of others. But let me ask you this. If some people are not able to take care of themselves, would it not behoove the community as a whole to help that person?
Right.
Absolutely. But they cannot help others unless they themselves are on stable footing, and that can't help happen without selfishness. So this is a conversation that I think is far reaching and can get quite political or emotionally charged. But I believe that at some point, most things are inherently selfish. Like no one is going to lay down, even someone who will martyr themselves does so for legacy,
Mm-hmm.
but legacy is self-motivated.
Mm-hmm.
See where I'm going with that?
So here, this is interesting because I think so many things that's perspective.
Absolutely.
I agree with everything you're saying. Instead of saying you're selfish or your wife's selfish, for example, I would say you guys have a great symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
And you being a coach saying that it's selfish for me because I get something from it, I go, I wouldn't rate that as selfish. I would relate that as a symbiotic relationship and that's ideally that's how it is if everybody walks away with something.
Absolutely.
Because
Yep.
because I know you like it and I know it benefits you and I totally agree. There's nothing I get more emotional helping someone achieve their goal than I ever got achieving a world record.
100%. Well, not that I've ever achieved a world record, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. But so it's not really that I mean, deep inside you're helping someone too, but that helping someone helps you. And
I,
ideally, that's just the best situation in my mind.
I'll share with you a quote that I'm going to quote myself because I'm that bit of an
Awesome.
egotist. The highest purpose of service is serving the highest purpose in others.
Yeah.
And that is something that has been I was listening to a podcast with Jordan Peterson. He was talking about service. And one of the things that he spoke about was serving the highest purpose in others. And I was like, man, every time I help someone achieve the highest level of achievement for themselves, that lights me up so much.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can do that every day, which is, you know, I'm incredibly grateful that that's literally what I do every day.
Yeah.
That's a good
See,
thing.
I would say I like the quote, the tide raises all ships.
Yep.
So I want to be the
My
tide. I want to
favorite.
raise everyone as high as we can possibly have capacity to be raised.
I like that. Yeah, that's why I use that all the time. I actually use it in a team meeting with my coaches today because we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And I mean, if we take that type of approach, like we're all in this together, like we all have to do our parts, we all have to take care of ourselves, we all have to be
Mm-hmm.
selfish, but that doesn't mean that that selfishness cannot have benevolent ends.
Right.
So I really love language. I think language is incredibly fascinating. I learned very late in life how important the meanings I attach to the words that I use are
Mm-hmm.
in shaping the perspective with which I view the world. And ever since I've been able to choose my words more carefully, the world that I look at has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Even something as simple as we hear it all the time from our clients, I don't have time to do that. What if you just reframe that statement into, I'm sorry, I can't prioritize that right now?
Mm-hmm.
Completely different. Now you are the one in control. You're not the victim, right? Time is not victimizing you.
Yes.
You are the person who
One
chooses.
statement is on the negative side and the other statement is on a more positive side.
Yeah, and this is where, the post that that you first commented on a few days ago, it, action is something that really, really matters. We can think and we can talk and we can philosophize all we want, but action is what moves the world. So we talked about before the podcast started, we talked about the mindset of high achievers and this sort of inability to accept failure and how mental blocks or limiting beliefs can really affect our progress. And I think they affect our progress more so because they show us a world in which we cannot succeed.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have that sort of viewpoint, action isn't even on the table because we're victims. We are at the mercy of the world around us. But if we can shift our perspective to one that's action oriented, now we can go out, break shit, learn, iterate, go out and try again. And when we're the ones in control, we have that internal locus of control where we control our destiny. That unlocks so much potential in people. And whether it's training, whether it's nutrition, whether it's business, there's parallels to draw across all of these platforms in which you make all the decisions in your life. No one is forcing you to put the spoon to your mouth. No one is forcing you to lift that weight or do that cardio. It's all by your own volition.
And I think that I think that travels down through to, like, in training, even the smallest goal. If somebody wants to lose 10 pounds, if they're convinced that it's my genetics or it's this or it's that, or I don't have a coach or I don't have the, you've already set yourself up for failure. And I think in terms of, it's funny because I'm really big on words too. And there's like certain words that just have this huge, like virtue. Virtue is a word that I've loved ever since I was a kid. Like, it just has this huge meaning to me. And words can mean so much. And if I look at, in coaching, there's cueing. I can tell a person the same thing 10 different ways. They don't get it. And then I hit on the one way and they pick it up like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how you say things is so important. And then even into conversations, there's a lot of times, I know this has happened to me, and I listen in other conversations where people will be saying the same thing, but they might have a different understanding of a particular word.
Mm-hmm.
That just messes the whole thing up. Where if they would go, wait a minute, what does that word mean to you? What does it mean to me? Let's come up with a common definition, and now we can easily move forward and probably make a much bigger impact.
I think a lot of people shy away from that conversation because they're more concerned with being right than finding the truth.
Very true.
And I think that's perpetuated more and more these days in the social media space because people attach being right to having credibility. So if I was to admit that I was wrong about something, it would call into question the credibility of my knowledge. When in fact, admitting you were wrong to me is a very professional approach because it shows that you're open to learning and you're open to growth. But when, say, for example, you've built your platform on this one thing and all of your business is surrounded by this one thing, and then some study comes out that proves that that one thing is not as valuable as you believe it to be, are you not going to fight tooth and nail to protect what you've built? Personally, I wouldn't. I would pivot. But when you have this insecurity about the things that you believe and your credibility and such, I don't blame people for the way that they act. But when you're trying to be right, you can't have a productive conversation. Because if you're trying to be right, that means there's emotion attached to it. And when there's emotion attached to it, there's no more productivity. It's gotten to the point where if I know that the person across from me having a discussion has an emotional attachment to the outcome of our discussion, I won't even engage.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's really true. I know even in personal relationships, if, or romantic relationships even more, if we're having a discussion, it starts getting very emotional, I'm more apt to go, hey, can we put a pause on this and like wait till we can come back with less emotion and think about this a little more logical. And I think that I had a funny instance with my mom and my great nieces the other day, because I talked to my mom a lot about all this philosophical stuff that is rolling around in my head. And my great nieces are like 2 and 4. And I know they can't understand this, but I thought it was so cool that my mom actually did this. Riley or Emmy comes in and she's like, Riley made me upset and did this and that. And my mom goes, well, hold on. Riley didn't make you upset.
Ooh,
Riley
go
did
mom.
this and you are upset. So Riley was wrong and she'll be punished for that, but you got to take responsibility. And I was like, dude, I know that she's too young to totally get this, but I think it's awesome that my mom is already working that in and
Go
like
mom.
kind of going a little subliminal of like, hey, don't let the world, not everyone is making this happen to you. Take responsibility, take that charge
Love that.
and
If
control
I could
yourself.
high five your mom, I would high five her through the screen. Yeah. Did you have a this is like, did you have a bad 10 minutes or did you have a bad day?
Yes.
Or, I had a client the other day. She's like, yeah, working out at 6 a.m. doesn't work for me because I couldn't do it on this day. I'm like, does it not work for you or could you just not do it on that day? She's like,
Mm-hmm.
I see where you're going with this and I hate you for it. I'm just like,
Yeah, I did an
you know,
Instagram post the other day where people like, man, I just want to go to bed and start over. And like, I've actually said that in my past. And I thought, well, wait a minute, that's dumb. How does going to bed reset everything?
especially
Like,
for you, you don't sleep.
I can take 5 minutes right now and clear my head of what happened. And I do the same thing in lifts. Like, I'm notorious for missing a lift and then coming back and smashing it. Because I'm like, those lifts are not connected. That
I
one
did.
lift happened. The next lift's going to happen. They don't have to be tied together.
What's the dumbest thing you've ever done in that regard?
In the regard of
Of like missing something and coming back and taking it.
the dumbest thing I've ever done, like to be unsuccessfully or successfully.
Either or.
I remember in one of my first meets, before I really knew what was going on, and this was before my training partner, Scott, that we talked about earlier. This was before I even knew him. I had seen him at a meet or two. I warmed up in the back with like 4:05, barely got it. But I was like, well, I'm opening with 4:15 and I'm still going to open with it. I don't care. And of course I missed it. I look back at that now and go, man, the reason I'm smart is because I've done so many dumb things.
Yeah, I
But
remember
I
I
mean,
was
I've had meets where the '07 Arnold, I weighed in light. So when I went to, and I had a torn hamstring. When I went to put my gear on, I'm standing next to Ethan, my training partner. Ethan's talking to Louis Simmons. And I put my briefs on and Ethan turns around and goes, how'd you get those on? I go, I don't, they just went on. And he's like, all right, I'll go get the new ones. And I go, no, I'm not putting on new briefs at the Arnold.
yeah.
He's like, okay. So I do another warm up and I come back and I put my suit on and he's still talking to Lou and he turns around and goes, all right, I'm getting the new ones. I go, no, you're not. I go, I'm not changing here. This
Yeah.
is it. This is the pinnacle. This is the top.
Yeah.
And then, so I go out and did I re-tear I retore the hamstring on my first attempt and I missed it because I like felt it tear worse and I went, oh shit, I got to get this. I missed it. So I went ahead and took it on my second, which was like 11:40, I think. And then so my partners are like, what do you want to do on your third? I go, what do you mean? What do I want to do? We're going up. And they're like, are you sure? And I go, yeah, it's the Arnold. I don't care. Like we're doing it.
Mhm.
And I actually ended up hitting 11:73.
See, I love that. Do you know Shane Church?
I know of him. I don't think we've actually ever met.
Okay, so Shane and I used to be training partners back when I was living in Canada, and I was training for the Arnold, and it was my heaviest squat was 815. I took it to the bottom and kind of just lost my balance forward and pitched it over my head.
Mm-hmm.
Mono caught it. Everyone was fine. I took my spotter through the back wall though, because I shot out and like pushed him through the wall. Um, ended up like herniating 2 discs in my neck. I walked outside, swore a lot, came back inside and hit the lift. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that was really stupid. Because then the next day I'm like this, like my shoulders all jacked up. I can't fucking move.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but I squatted 815. It's all good.
Yeah, but what did you learn from that lesson?
That my neck has herniations in it now.
You would have learned that even if you didn't take that last
I
attempt.
learned, honestly, I learned that there is a lot of motivation to be had um, through frustration. I mean, frustration, there's so many things that can motivate you for positive reasons. Everything in my coaching brain tells me that that was a dumb decision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's also the attempt that gave me the confidence to load 850 on the platform. So it's like, would I have been able to get to 850 had that not taken place? Probably not. Um, it also showed me that I'm a lot tougher than I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
And you carry that forward through everything that you do. I'm, listen, without a barbell in my hands, I would not be where I am in my life.
I
I
would
I
completely
firmly believe
agree.
that. I I think back and like I was never a bad student. I was honestly a very good student. I just was very lazy. Um, I didn't want to go to university. When I got to university, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Then I find this metal thing that I can lift up and down, and all of a sudden I have purpose in my life.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden I have structure. All of a sudden I have discipline. All of a sudden I am this person that other people look up to. And now I get to use this metal thing that I lift up and down to inspire other people that help inspire other people. Powerlifting to me is the perfect lens through which to view life.
Mm-hmm.
Even just looking at a squat, you're sitting in the bottom with the weight that could literally kill you, but you stand up. The weight of the world on your shoulders and you stand up.
I try to get my lifters, especially my competitive lifters, to be aware of the lessons they're learning because I'm the same way. I would say, without a doubt, there is no way I would be who I am without lifting.
Mhm.
And even one of the biggest points is, and I've told this story a bunch of times when I first started training conjugate, and everybody on my team went to shit like every 3 weeks. And then we'd have to back off, and then we'd start up, and we would go good. And then when 3 weeks later, we went to shit. And I ended up talking to Dave Tate about it, and then we ended up. There became a point where he's like, "Well, what do you think you should do?" And I'm like, "Man, I think we're training too much." But I mean, that's against everything that everyone says. Everybody jumps to more, 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 more. And I'm not against more. I'm just against what's the more. Again, defining the term.
Yeah.
And it came to the point where he goes, well, listen, you have two choices. You can go to the gym and beat yourself up, because that's what I did. That's how I dealt with all my anger issues. That was one of my first loves of lifting. Is the first time I lifted super heavy when I was a kid, I went, oh, I feel great. So I learned that when I got pissed off, I would go lift until I was exhausted and I felt awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But Dave goes, do you want to be one of the best in the world, or do you want to use the gym to deal with your problems? And that was like this huge, profound thing that set me on this path to eventually going, wait a minute, why do I have to be in the gym every day? Why the hell am I so pissed off? And I started digging inside myself. And then I continued to start seeing these lessons I was learning in the gym and training other people and helping other people and watching them. And it's like, man, the gym, there's so many life lessons in the gym that if we would just take the time to move them into the rest of our lives, we'll be way more successful.
Yeah. What comes to mind as a conversation that I have with clients is like, do you want to be competitive or do you want to compete?
Yeah.
two different things, right? Do you want to just be on the platform competing, or do you want to win? And there's a lot of things that pull off from that. I look at the people who are competing at the highest level, and there are some that you can tell just have a chip on their shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some that you can tell genuinely just love competing. What you do to win matters a lot in the long term. What I mean by that is, I'm going to win at all costs. I'm going to eat more food, take more drugs, abuse myself more, and go down this, honestly, this negative spiral of insecurity associated with winning. Or you can look at it as, I'm going to use this as a vehicle to better myself as a human, which leads you to that long game of a little less, a little more moderate, slower progress. But the chances are that person who took the slow road is probably going to be in the game a lot longer than the person who took the angry, insecure road. So at the end of the day, even if you would have asked yourself, do I want to deal with my anger, or do I want to be the best in the world? Even if your answer was, I want to be the best in the world, taking the slow road was probably the right answer.
No, that's what I'm saying. That
Yeah,
me
like, but
saying,
even, sorry, even if you would have taken, even if you would have said, like, I want to use it to deal with my anger, you probably still would have been better off taking the slow road, because you'd be able to
Mhm.
use it to deal with your anger more than if you burned out really quickly.
if I would have used it to deal with my anger, I still would have been good. I think no matter what, I had made up my mind I was going to be good. But I would have burned myself out, probably might have killed myself, or I would be one of the lifters who at my age are having hip replacements and their shoulders are screwed up. And I didn't. I took the chance of, like, listen, I have to learn how to deal with my anger other ways. I need to go to the root of the problem of that, and then I need to use my brain and not my emotions to get to the level I want. Where now I'm 52, and other than a back issue, I'm healing up now, which was not from lifting, but from job and lack of sleep. I have no shoulder problems. I have no knee problems. I have no hip problems. I can go ride my BMX bike for as long as I want. Like, I mean, I'm healthy. I was at the top and I'm healthy.
It's pretty cool. I was forced to deal with my motivations behind lifting through injury. I had a second knee surgery in 2015, and I had to deal with the fact that I couldn't use training to deal with my emotions anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I had to find something else. And in the similar vein to you, like, I started going to therapy. I was like, I need to figure out why I have these issues that I have, why I'm, taking the actions that I'm taking, why am I engaging in the practices that I'm engaging in, why am I choosing the partners that I'm choosing, why am I choosing to deal with the career path that I've chosen. Again, like, having lifting taken away from me was the catalyst for a lot of personal growth, but it's still
Mm-hmm.
lifting led to that personal growth.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The lessons in the gym transfer so well into life that I will lift for the rest of my life. I have no doubt that the day before I die, I'll probably be in the gym because I
One
love it.
thing,
I love the lessons that I get from it. I love, at this point in my life, I really like looking back on my career, because, not to reminisce or nothing, but I do have a bunch of funny stories.
for sure.
But I love looking back and seeing how I changed. And I love looking back to see how I could be a better coach for other people. Like, what mistakes did I make? How could I have got to that quicker? Those kind of things. But I like looking back, and because even looking back now, I'll go, oh, I never noticed that I learned that lesson there, and it changed me, but I didn't really totally realize what was going on. So it's fun to look back at that and see that change. And to me, that's the whole thing anyway, because the more I get into this, the more, as I'm kind of a fan of quantum physics, I can't do the math. The math just blows my mind. But theoretical quantum physics fascinates me. And the more I get into this, the more we're all connected. Everything's connected.
For
Like
sure.
you can't strip one thing out. I can't go, this is my work, this is my work, this is my lifting. Bullshit. They affect each other. Like the fact that you think you can do that is just not realistic.
I fought that for so long. I fought that tooth and nail for so long. And I remember actually having this conversation with Todd about it. I was like, he's like, hey man, you're not going to be able to do what you're doing forever. I'm like, no, man, I'm great at compartmentalizing. I study when I need to study. I train when I need to train. I coach when I need to coach. He's like, you can do that now, maybe. But when other things start getting layered on your plate, it's going to be really tough. Yeah, whatever, old man. And then here I am realizing that no, your life isn't built in silos. It's an ecosystem,
Mm-hmm.
and everything feeds into itself. Like I know that, when my lifting's going really well, my business is going to go really well, and my personal life is going to go really well. And, but if I'm having issues in work, I'm not going to be able to push my training as hard because mentally my mind's going to be in my work. And I think you get better at flipping switches as you get older and like tuning into what you're doing and being present in what you're doing. And that does help. But cumulative stress is cumulative stress.
Physical or mental, it affects the body the same way.
Stress. It's all cortisol. So to believe that you can, truly compartmentalize things is just a bit naive. Um, but what struck me as really interesting from what you were saying, the parallels between lifting and life. One of the reasons why I think I've been successful in business to this point, and I'm still trying to achieve more success, whatever that means to me, and we can talk about that or we can not. But anyway, um, is I just apply the same work ethic to my business as I did to my lifting. And I think that's where people miss the mark. They think that business is some, incredibly complex thing, but all it is a set of inputs and outputs, just like
Mm-hmm.
training. Training, you have your sub-maximal effort, you have your max effort, you have your nutrition, you have your sleep, you have your stress management, you have your recovery modalities. Those are your inputs, the output, your total goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in business, you have service delivery, efficiencies, marketing, you have time management, you have follow-ups and engagements. All those things are just inputs. The output is impact and finances. So why can't we just apply the same mentality of I'm going to do everything that I can do to build this thing forward? I speak to so many people who are like, I can eat 6 meals a day every day. I can get the same amount of sleep. I can do all this. But fuck, man, building a business is so hard. Like, is it really?
Yeah. How is it any different?
How is it any different? And to be fair, a lot of the tasks associated with business might not be things that you love doing. Personally, I don't love doing my taxes. The prospect that I have to do work so that I can give someone else my money just doesn't jive with me,
Mm-hmm.
but it has to get done. Um, I know a lot of people who really struggle on the social media side. They just hate creating content. They don't enjoy it, but creating content allows them to reach more people. And if they're motivated by reaching and impacting others, there's no better way to reach a larger audience than social media. If you look at a post and you say you get 1,000 people viewed your post, when was the last time you sat in front of 1,000 people and gave a message?
Mm-hmm.
Or, oh man, Paul, I did an IG live the other day and only 11 people showed up. I'm like, motherfucker, when was the last time you sat in a room with 10 people listening to you?
I've done actual seminars with less than 10 people.
So have I. And
That's a really good way to look at it, though.
yeah, but it just, for me, like the reframe process is something that it's a superpower really because it completely changes your mindset about things. There's
Perspective.
always a positive perspective that you can see, yeah, that you can
Mm-hmm.
swing on things, right? Whether it's even the most mind-numbing tasks like taxes. It's like I could look at it as I have to do work to pay somebody, or I could look at it as I have to do work to make sure I pay that person as little as possible.
Mhm.
That's how I choose to look
Well, I
at it.
think take it back. So
Yeah, sure.
in training, there's a lot of stuff in training I don't like. Like I'm super flexible, but I don't really like stretching. It kind of bores the hell out of me. It always feels great afterwards, but when I'm doing it, I'm like, this is uncomfortable. This sucks.
I hate
But I'm
stretch.
I'm doing it for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't really especially when I first started doing GPP sessions or like recovery sessions, I absolutely hated it. Like I only did it because that way it got me in the gym to help deal with my mental shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was 385, 390, I hated eating, literally hated eating. I hated eating a bag of M&Ms. Like I was eating so much, I hated it. So you go through my whole lifting career and the stuff that I loved, which was lifting really insanely heavy,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't happen all that often. I did a lot more shit that I didn't like.
Of course he did.
So now move forward to Chad goes, man, I'd like to have a podcast. I think that would be fun to do. I'm horrible at tech stuff. I'm horrible at it. I don't know how I managed to teach myself, but it's the attitude. I go, you
Mm-hmm.
know what? Somebody else figured it out. Well, I can figure it out too. And so I start working on it. And yeah, there's times that get frustrating, and I use those to go, ooh, Chad, this is a good time to work on controlling your emotions. Can you stay
Yep.
focused and calm? Because if you get frustrated, it's only going to get harder. One time I had a friend who was working on a pipeline, and we were talking at the gym, and he's like, you know what? He goes, today, like I had this last bolt, and he's like, it would not thread on. And he goes, I'm getting more pissed, and it won't thread on. And finally I went, that's it. I'm taking a break. He goes, I went, sat. He goes, we're out in the desert. I just sat on my tailgate and watched the desert and had a drink and came back. That thing screwed right on.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, yeah, there was nothing wrong with it the whole time. The reason it didn't work was because you were frustrated in your attitude, but you
Okay.
were smart enough to come back and change it.
That's a perfect story for something that I wanted to run by you. So I made a story post a couple days ago about being overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And being overwhelmed is something that I can empathize with, because when you have a lot of people's expectations on you, and then you couple that with the expectations you hold for yourself, it's a very heavy burden to hold.
Mhm.
I personally feel like overwhelm comes from resistance more than anything. So you have these expectations placed upon you, and I'd love to talk to you about expectations a little bit, but you have these expectations placed upon you. Then you have the things that you'd also like to accomplish for yourself. And you feel like this massive weight is on you, but and you're trying to push this away. You're like, I don't want this. I don't want this. And that's when you feel overwhelmed because you can't push it away. Whereas when I'm coaching someone through that sort of emotional roller coaster, I coach them through acceptance. Because if you're overwhelmed, you're a victim. There's an external locus of control. You are being acted upon by the universe. You're trying to push the universe away, but the universe is always going to win.
Mhm.
You're just pushing, pushing, pushing. You're overwhelmed. As soon as you switch to an attitude of acceptance, you're like, okay, I have to do all of these things. Am I able to do all of these things? Yes or no? Am I willing to do all of these things? And do I want to do all these things? And those don't always align. But as soon as you accept the situation, which your buddy did, he's like, I accepted the fact that this is going to be a tough bolt. I'm no longer angry. I'm going to go back to it. All of a sudden it threads. And I think that's the perfect analogy for how we deal with overwhelm. As soon as we accept life situations, things just seem to flow a lot easier.
Well, I think it takes out the emotional aspect of it, and you just start looking at it logically and go, well, this is it. This is, and I could say the same thing with my depression and my sleep issues. I could have went, well, I can't sleep. I'll never be great at this sport.
Mm-hmm.
I could have let my emotions take over, and I went, nope, it just means I have to go about it differently.
Yep.
Doesn't mean I can't get there. And honestly, if you believe in manifestation and you actually learn what manifestation is, there's so many misconceptions of it.
Of course.
There's a part where it's like, stop wanting it to happen now. Believe that it will happen, and it'll happen in its time, but you got to keep working towards it. You got to believe that you have it, not that you're going to get it. You got to believe that you have it, and just keep going forward.
That's where I'm lost in the manifestation as people normally talk about it. Like, I made a longer form YouTube video on it. It should be out probably today. Because people will talk about manifestation. They're like, I'm manifesting this. I made a vision board. They get on their knees, they jerk off to their vision board, and they're like, yeah, fucking right. And I'm like, you're missing the point. The point of manifestation is that you believe that you're going to achieve these things through the effort you put forth.
Well, honestly, it's not even believing that you're going to get it, because if you put out in the universe, hey, I want this, you're telling the universe you don't have it. So you have to kind of believe that I have this. I already have this, but I'm gonna show the universe by keeping to work towards it and keeping that mindset.
Yeah, I'm believing in the fact that you have the capacity to achieve these things. But the capacity to achieve these things only happens through work. And that work is the step that people miss.
Yes.
They'll just believe and believe and believe and worship this thing and look at it and be like, but how have your behaviors changed?
And
how have your daily habits changed?
Yeah. Really all about the law of attraction. And if you're not working towards it, then you're not attracting it. You have to keep putting in the work. It's not just going to happen. Because the universe, and this is a weird thing to say, and it's all kind of like hippie spiritual. If I'm not doing the work, then the universe is like, well, he doesn't want it. Like, he's saying he wants it, but he doesn't really want it. And I think that goes with matching the energy from your mind and your heart. And if you're not working and doing the things for it, those two their energy is not going to line up.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I can get behind the less woo-woo part of that.
Yeah.
But no, I totally get what you're saying. And I think a lot of what we do as coaches is just unlocking that belief in people and showing them a route of work that will lead them to where they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of what people look for from a coach is, this might sound weird, but like permission to be great. I think
that's an interesting topic, because I think there's a lot of people that are afraid to succeed.
Oh, I think most people are afraid to succeed. I think most people are afraid to succeed. I think most people are afraid to pursue greatness. Mm-hmm. I think most people look at greatness through a very narrow lens. I think greatness as a whole. Okay, let's talk about balance here. Okay, so balance to me doesn't exist in the acute, like in the zoomed in world. Balance does not exist. But if we're talking about greatness and we look at greatness through the lens of self-mastery and living a full and great life does require balance, because you cannot live a full life if you don't pour into many, many areas. The issue is you cannot pour into all of those areas all the time. So there has to be periods of unbalance where you focus on different aspects of your life, as you mentioned earlier, going all in on something.
Mm-hmm.
But over the course of the seasons of your life, you must invest in all things. So to live a full and balanced life, I absolutely believe that you can do that. But within each season, there is an imbalance that gets created because each season requires priorities, and priorities cannot be in balance because some things have to be prioritized over others. You have to say yes to some stuff. You have to say no to others. So, this period of our lives, me and my wife are going all in on our personal, like she's going for her IFBB pro card and we're building our business. We're all in on that, to the point where we literally left our home to move somewhere where all we have to focus on is that.
That's awesome.
I'm not being a great son right now. I'm not being a great brother. I'm not being a great uncle.
Really? I would
I
say
don't
you
think
are.
I don't call them enough, but in
Yeah,
the
but you're
time
leading by example. You're showing them a
I
way
am,
of, like, we have this,
you're
and
fucking ruining
sometimes
my
it's different.
story. Um, to some degree, I do agree that I'm not necessarily being a bad uncle, or a bad brother, but I'm not present with them. I'm not all in on my family right now. I'm all in on my work and my wife's pursuits and my own pursuits. But there was a season prior to us moving where I was going to hockey games every Sunday. We were having family dinners every Saturday or Sunday. I was going to hockey practice, and I was Uncle Paul, and I was all in on being Uncle Paul. And different ages and stages of life, different seasons of life demand different prioritizations. So when I look at being a great person, that requires balance. But pursuing greatness in all areas requires you to be unbalanced during periods of time. And when you look at the pressure that you try to put on yourself to be balanced is going to drive you fucking nuts.
Not me.
Oh man. When I think about, listen, when I think about the amount of expectations people feel from others, it makes me feel really sorry for them. I
But that's their own issue because they're feeling it. They don't have to feel it.
They don't have to, but they do. And
Mm-hmm.
trying to get people out of that mindset. And this is why I wanted to talk about expectations, because I think expectations we can talk about in the sense of like lifters lifting for the gram, because the expectation is that the gram wants to see them lifting heavy weights.
Yes.
So they test themselves all the time because that expectation is there. Or you engaging in certain practices because your social groups expect you to do these things,
Mm-hmm.
or you doing certain things because your partner expects you to do those things. Part of my personal development, my growth, my journey in mental health, I have relinquished all expectations from my life, to the point where I don't even expect that my wife's going to wake up and love me tomorrow, because when she does, I'm pleasantly surprised.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that I stop acting in a way that would lead to her loving me tomorrow. And that doesn't mean that I stop acting in a way where I'm pursuing my own level of greatness. I just choose not to entertain the expectations of others. And I also believe that I can't hold others to the same level of expectation that I hold myself to, because I've just been perpetually disappointed. And as a business owner, if as a business owner and you're outsourcing stuff, get ready to be disappointed every day,
Mm-hmm.
because no one will value what you value in your business and your business's growth the same level as you do. And if you expect them to, it's just not going to work. So you have to just keep doing what you're doing, relinquish the expectations, be forthcoming with what you like, and whatever comes back to you, just be pleasantly surprised by it.
I think that's a good philosophy. I mean, you still have to have goals, and it's just kind of like living in the present, but
Exactly.
still
Yes.
having goals for the future, and go, I don't know what's going to happen. This is what I'm going to work towards, and we're going to see where we get. It's kind of like there was a point where my goal was the all-time total. I got close. I got really close. Um, but I also went over the deep end trying to hit it. And if I would have kept going, my depression, I would have killed myself. My depression was getting worse and worse, and I was training harder and harder. And do I look back now and go, well, that was your main goal, Chad, was to hit the all-time total, so you weren't successful? No, hell no. I was very successful.
Hell
Like
yeah.
I'm extremely proud of what I did. but it also doesn't mean what you think it means when you're going for it. It's kind of like hitting a world record. When you hit a world record, you kind of go, huh, that's cool.
What's the next one?
And I don't know if I don't know what I expected it to be, but I do remember the first time I hit one going, cool. All right. What's next?
Didn't Donnie Thompson write an article or like put out a video? It was like, no one gives a shit about your squat or something like that.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah, there's something along those lines, but I remember reading it and being like, you know what? No one gives a shit about my lifting except me. And that's really cool.
I mean,
Because
people like it and take it, but quite honestly, I mean, even with me, there's very few in powerlifting of people that I didn't really like. But there's been a couple of people that were kind of heroes of mine, and I met him, and I'm like, wow, what an ass. I really don't give two shits how strong he is. He's still an ass.
I'm the same way.
So I'm like, I don't even want to talk to him. I've actually walked away from people that I was like huge fans of, because once I got to know him, I'm like, yeah, I could care less about you.
I
Like, I'll
will
give you
say
credit for being that strong, but you're a horrible person. And to me, being a good person is way above anything you can
way
lift.
above. I will say though, I agree with you 100%, and I've had the same experiences, but I will say that the majority of the time people are way cooler than I thought they would be.
Yes, I would. That's what I would say. There's only a few that were like that.
Yeah.
On the whole, like the first time I met Ed Cohn, like he was so
Oh,
cool. And I was like, oh
just
my
a
God, like this
beauty.
guy's awesome.
Yeah, he
And
gave me
even
his
at that
phone
point, I'm
number.
like, I really don't even care what he lifts anymore because he's such a cool dude.
Yeah. I had Ed on on my podcast, and the one thing I asked him was like, how come the majority of people who used to compete at a high level tend to talk a lot of shit about the sport, but you have never stopped trying to be a positive ambassador for it? And he said
Never.
something that will just stick with me. He said, I'm just being a good person.
Yep.
And I was like, it really is that simple, eh? He's like, yeah, man, just
Mm-hmm.
be a good person. Okay, I can do that.
It was funny because back in the day when I was competing, it was like there was this big conflict between single ply and multiply. And I'm like, well, this guy's the best in the world, and he doesn't give two shits. He can respect that. Hey, you're wearing more gear. You're probably going to lift a little more. Like whatever, it's cool. He goes, and I think he understood the complexities of raw, single ply, and multiply. There's different challenges in each one of those, and they're all impressive. Like,
Oh,
why do
for
we have to
sure.
separate it? So hold on, I want to read this definition of this. I just looked this up on Oxford Language, and it's the definition of balanced.
Okay.
Keeping or showing a balance, arranging in good proportions. So I've always thought of this as one of those things, and I think I've had discussions on multiple podcasts about balance. Because first of all, I think most people that say they don't like balance, and I'm talking generally,
Yeah.
they're trying to justify their feelings.
Mhm.
They don't want to put a lot of time in other parts of their life. They want to put all their time in lifting. And I've had discussions with some of the top lifters in the world, and they're like, you can't have balance. I go, well, wouldn't your lifting have been better if you balanced your relationship a little bit? Wouldn't your lifting have been better if the rest of your life was better? Wouldn't you have lifted longer and been healthier? So I see balance as just as scales. So you have two scales. Now these scales can be equally balanced, or they can be balanced off tilt. But if one scale hits the table or flies off the table, then you're screwed. I personally knock the scale off the table onto the floor and everywhere else. If I would have kept at least some balance, I would have been better off.
So
And as
you're,
your life
yeah.
goes, this balance is going to change, but it's always balanced. You're not letting a scale tip over. You're not letting one side of the scale drop to the ground. So
See, I can get
my
behind
question
that.
is,
I can get behind that.
everybody talks about balance. I go, well, do you think the guy, I mean, what is balanced in? Do you think the guy that works 40 hours a week, stops by the bar, has a couple beers, then goes home and helps his kid do homework, drinks some more beers, watch TV, then goes to bed and gets up and does it all over again? Do you think he has balance in his life? I don't think so. That's not balance to me.
I thought you were gonna say goes to the bar, drinks some beers, comes home and beats up his kid. That's where I thought you were gonna go with that. I was like, oh, this is dark.
No, because like people talk about balance, and it's like, well, what is balance then? What no one defines what balance is.
Well, the individual defines what balance is for them. And I think balance, I actually do like your definition of balance because it does play well into mine in that the nothing is ever equal, but nothing touches the floor,
Yes.
which is I can totally get behind that because even right now, I said I'm not being the best brother and uncle. I'm still not ignoring them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Um, or there was time and I too have knocked the scale off the ground, off the table onto the ground, smashed it with a sledgehammer. I've done that. Now, to me, when I think, I like using the definition of balance being equal because I think it's something a lot easier for people to conceptualize, and then using time scale as a means to zoom out. And when
Mhm.
you look at something being off balance over the long term, it equals out. But I do completely agree because I can tell you, like, I've been in situations where my relationship completely ruined my life.
Mhm.
And when I
And
say,
how could you possibly think that your training is at its best
oh, listen,
when
I'm
your
not going to be
heart and
training at my
your heart's
best
crushing and you're depressed?
when it's 2 in the morning and I'm squatting crying. Like I'm not gonna
Yeah.
so I'm not gonna be doing my best work here.
Hmm. And
That
like
said,
even
I
with
did
your,
PR at that meet though.
I keep zooming back on your definition with your nephews because I go, well, wait a minute. Do you want to teach your nephews that you always spend time with them and you never push the limits of something else?
No, I totally agree with you. Yeah, because
So there is balance. It's just in a bigger scale, or my definition of.
yeah, yeah, I look at balance in the big picture, like very long duration,
I mean,
big
I
picture.
see your nephew being 20 years old and going, "Hey, Uncle Paul, man, I'm not going to see you much because I'm going to try to get this business started." And I see you going, "That's awesome, man. If you need any help, call me."
Yeah, fucking right.
And being
He wants
proud, and this goes back to the being selfish
exactly.
thing, being proud that you know he's going to do that because he saw you do it.
Well, you could even, in that same breath, you could even take parenting. I know a lot of people are like, parenting is a benevolent act. No, it's fucking not. Because if you don't invest into that kid, you're fucked later in life.
Yeah.
So you better play the long game and you better give to that kid, or
Yeah.
else he or she is not going to take, he or she or them is not going to take care of you later in life.
And how much pride do you take? How much pride do parents take in their kid being successful? And that's
Very excited.
selfish.
100%. 100%.
So again, I go back to this whole quantum, everything starts as energy and it's
Mhm.
waves. So it's up and downs. What on earth makes us think we're going to find a perfect balance or that things always going to be good? Like the base form of the universe is waves. It just makes sense that our lives are going to be waves too.
Oh, yeah, I can totally get behind that. I think what's what's really funny is life has a way. The quote I heard was life happens at the speed of life.
Mhm.
And that kind of hit me because life never stops. Time never stops. We can't stop time, we can't slow it down, but time is all we have. And learning to be present, learning to recognize that your feet are on the ground where they are, and that's where they're supposed to be, to me gives me a feeling. And it's just a feeling. It gives me a feeling that I own my time.
Mhm.
And that has unlocked a lot of potential within me to achieve great things. I would not, and I did not have this when I was at my most unbalanced,
Mhm.
right? When that scale was on the floor getting smashed with a sledgehammer, I had no idea where my feet were. And as soon as I got the ability or learned the ability to be where I am, all of a sudden my life changed. And I don't know whether my life changed because it actually changed or it changed just because of the way I was looking at it.
Well, to me, they're both change. Either way, it's change.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a, I'm not really one for the, wow, the word slipped my mind. Um, like when you're talking, hey, I'm a beautiful person. Hey, people love me.
Oh, affirmations.
And I'm not a big one for affirmations because kind of like you, it's like, okay, we said the words, but now do the work. But there is one affirmation that I did a post about, and I won't bother everybody with the story, but basically it's just saying, thank you for everything, and I have no complaints. And to me, that affirmation, it kind of makes me smile every time I say it because it basically reminds me of what you just said.
Mhm.
It's like, thank you for everything. Where I'm at right now in this very second, I'm good.
Pretty cool, man.
Like I'm on a podcast, I'm talking to my friend, everything's
Yeah.
good. And then the second part of that affirmation is I have no complaints, which to me that tells me anything that I did want right now, it's going to come to me in the future. I'm going to work for it. Like it's going to come. I'm not worried about it coming. It will come. It just comes when it comes, which reaffirms me back to this present position. You know, just live now, do the work now, and it'll work out.
Yeah, for sure. It's talked about a lot of things in this podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
These are the best ones though. I still remember like with the WPO, you know, we would come in a couple days early. We'd all be in the hotel. I remember sitting in the lobby talking with guys, and it's just such a, for me, going to a commercial gym is almost painful because I just see all this and I'm like, man, what are these people like? I mean, if you're going to do it, try to be good at it. Like, why aren't you people trying to be good at it? So even with the underground strength sessions at Elite, sometimes I would just sit there and smile because like everywhere I look, it's people doing things. And even if I don't agree with them, I know that they're doing it for a purpose and I know it works for them.
Yeah, they're trying to be their best.
So when we're sitting around and we're talking, telling stories and talking training and stuff, and it would be like somebody could say, yeah, I'm doing this right now. And I could be, you know what, I tried that, didn't really work, but maybe it didn't work at that time, or maybe it wasn't there. But I know you're one of the best in the world, so I'm going to remember that. Or they would say something, and I'm like, you know what? I had never tried that. I'm going to try that. And nobody was like, this is the way you do it. Everybody was like, well, here's what I'm doing, and it's working for me.
Well, what I found is that actual conversations in real life are exactly like that.
Mm-hmm.
The conversations that are like, this is right, that's wrong, fuck this, fuck you, that's on the internet. The internet is not a real place.
Yes. But that's when I started this podcast. I go, I really want it to be like, sometimes I feel like I'm lazy because I don't do a whole bunch of research before it. I always try to do some sort of research, but I go, I don't want to do research. I want to just sit down and talk because I feel like I learned the most. I don't feel like I learned the most reading books. I don't feel like I learned the most watching videos. I feel like I learned the best stuff just hanging out with other top lifters and talking.
Me too.
Like that was the real stuff. That was like, I don't give a crap if you have a study. This person, and that's one of my problems with all the people right now. This is it. This is where like I literally have had, I've literally saw people bag on somebody's program when that guy is one of the best strength athletes in the world or this massive, huge bodybuilder. And I'm like, how can you tell me it doesn't work when I'm looking at a person that it worked for? Like anybody with any logic in their brain has got to go, wait a minute. That guy does
because
it.
there's
He's
always an
huge.
excuse, right? It's like, oh, well, he took more drugs or he had better
Yeah.
genetics or whatever. It's like, no, evidence is evidence. Just because
Mhm.
it happened in a study, anecdotal evidence is still evidence.
And I
And I'll even
have,
take it further. Like I'm going to full on nerd on you a little bit here because this is something that irks me to no end. Listen, I have 2 master's degrees. I know how to read fucking research. You know what
mhm.
research gets presented in the results? the averages. So if you have a study that says XYZ causes ABC, it only caused ABC for a percentage of the population in that study. There
Mhm.
were people who had bad results. There are people who had better results. The average is what they're presenting you. So when you say, lengthened position causes more hypertrophy, it's like on average. But if I only train in the shortened range, does that mean that I get no hypertrophy? No, it doesn't, because there's studies that show shortened range causes hypertrophy. And and this is why I made that post yesterday. I was like, if someone talks in absolutes, if someone is not open to alternate viewpoints, if someone silences discourse, and if someone, attaches emotion to their opinion, it's not someone you want to be talking to.
Mhm.
So when I see posts like that, I'll never be one to participate in call out culture or reaction videos or things like that, because I don't believe that negativity solves any of our problems. But I do believe that that's motivation for me to continue putting out a good message, to
Mhm.
continue to show people that there is other ways of doing things and that there's no right and wrong. There's only context. And if there's one thing that I'm remembered for within the realm of education, it's that I presented the whole picture.
Right.
That's what I want.
I have with my sleep and my depression, which actually kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, is really a gift for me. I mean, yes, it makes my life suck. Yeah, I got to deal with a lot of shit. But like when I had my team and we were training heavy, you would come in and everybody would start asking questions,
Mhm.
and we're trying to ask to see how they're feeling. Like, hey, how's your appetite? You been eating good? Hey, how you been sleeping? How's your sense of well-being? You feel good? Do you feel bad? Like, have you been stretching? How's your stretching going? And it's all just trying to find out their level of readiness
Yeah.
or their level of overtraining, however you want to say it. But I found out very quickly that when they start going, man, my sleep got a little restless. Like I fell asleep quick, but I woke up within like 10 minutes and then I'm flopping and turning all night long. I'd be like, all right, you're not trained until you get a good night of sleep. And what I realized over time is like their bad sleep is my good sleep. And
Yeah.
if I could get them to back off training and get their sleep back on track, they wouldn't go down this rabbit hole. Like we talked about my insomnia earlier. One of the triggers I found for my insomnia was overtraining. If I didn't overtrain, I don't have insomnia. But my sleep is already bad. So when I start overtraining, it keeps declining.
Mhm.
And I found that if I this gave me suffering allowed me the knowledge and understanding because of the perspective it gave me to see this in other people.
Suffering is learning very quickly.
And the same thing when I first came out with my depression and I first wrote about it and I thought I was going to lose my sponsors and everything. I got this great positive response.
Of course.
And I went, holy shit, like this isn't a negative thing. This is, I suffer here, but I have the power to talk about it. Like I can help people.
Absolutely.
So my suffering, it kind of selfishly, this justifies my suffering to myself because I can help people because of it. So it makes it easier for me to deal with.
It's funny how when we are faced with personal challenges, one of the easiest solutions to turn around our perception is to help others.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the biggest things that you can do to improve your life. Even if you have no idea what to do, you feel like complete garbage, whether you're dealing with anxiety, depression, whatever. If you go pour into other people, all of a sudden things start to improve.
I've actually seen, I'm not a big study guy because I've had enough schooling to know that you can tweak a study in a lot of different ways.
Oh yeah.
But I have seen some people that have done studies on happiness. And one of the things that keeps coming up is the happiest people are generally people that help other people.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Well, I think you're helping a lot of people, man. I do. And it's like, we talk about
It's hard though,
obviously.
because like
Go
you
ahead.
said, you sometimes you look at, and I don't remember if this was on a podcast or before, but you look at your thing and you're like, oh man, I did that live thing and only 10 people watched. And like, this is another funny thing about my depression and stuff. And this is where I started what I was going to ask. When my depression is bad, I really, really have to work hard to keep my attitude. Cause I'll be like, man, I watch the internet, everybody follows all these idiots who just bitch about everyone else. And I go, I know all these guys that are really great and they have hardly any followers. That's it. This is stupid. I'm wasting my time. But then I get a better night of sleep and I'm able to get past that emotion on. I'm like, no, but you're still helping people. And it's a struggle and it's not enough. And I don't think it'll ever be enough for me. Like, I'm always going to want to reach more people. That's
Well,
just who I am.
and
It's
it's a
the same thing.
phenomenal
You break a
motivator.
world record and people are like, aren't you happy? And I'm like, no, because I know I can do more. Like, it's all about what I think I can do. It's not about a record.
Listen, I've been following you for a very long time. Like I'm not much younger than you, but I'm younger than you to the point where like you were achieving things before I was. So I followed you on Elite, followed your writing, read your articles, saw the training. I think was it the 2014 Arnold that you had the world record or no?
No, I think it was way earlier than that. I think it was like '07 or '08.
Okay. Well, I remember seeing you compete, and then I started reading the articles that you were writing about your depression, the insomnia, and even though they were challenging articles to read from the perspective of I could tell that you were suffering,
Mm-hmm.
they were always written from the perspective of I could tell that you were just a good person. And I think that more than anything, if that I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but I feel like if you're remembered for anything, it's for being a good person more than it is lifting over 1,000 pounds.
Which I would rather have.
Of
I would
course.
rather have people go, oh man, Chad's a good guy. And that dude was strong as shit. Than to have him go, Chad was strong as shit. Oh yeah, and he was a good guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't think anyone's going to remember me for my lifting, and that's totally okay. It was actually funny when I was talking to Ed. He's like, people know you as a coach more than a lifter. And I was like, well, that happened without my permission, but okay. Um, and that's honestly, it's totally okay because lifting's for me. I'm not lifting
I
for
wrote, and speak because you're Canadian. Um, there was a Canadian guy who eventually beat all of my drug-free world records. And I took the drug-free world records like through the roof. Because I actually went 24 something lifetime clean, but I think my best official, I did that in a non-tested meet. My best official was like 23 something, totally clean. And there was a guy from Canada who beat my records,
single
and
fly.
nobody, no, that was double. And nobody said anything about it. So I actually wrote an article on Elite, like congratulating this guy.
What was his name?
I can't even remember. I'd have to try to look up the records.
Hmm.
And people were like amazed that I wrote that letter. And I go, no, it's like, I love powerlifting. And if you love a sport, you want your records to be broken. It's
Absolutely.
exciting. It's good for the sport. And I go and I go, I know I took the records from like an 800-pound squat to like well over 1,000 drug free. I go, so I made those records legit. And this guy just beat him. That's awesome. That's great. He deserves like some freaking, hey, kudos to you, man.
Yeah.
And I was surprised that people were surprised about that.
Ego is a funny thing, man.
I mean, I love the sport. I love the sport over like what I did. Like, I want people to beat my records. I beat somebody's record and it was cool. I remember when I out-totaled Kazmar and I'm like, holy shit, I just out-totaled a guy I've been looking up to most of my life.
Fuck, man. I wanted the squat that I was going for was going to beat Kirk And I was like,
Oh, Captain Kirk Kowalski.
yeah, I was like, if I squat 832, I squat more than Kirk Karwoski.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tore my hamstring.
But even to be in there, to be on that platform and to be going for that,
Oh yeah.
and especially to be like,
I'm going to do it again. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to do it
that's a
again.
great experience. Why would I want someone else not to have that experience?
Yeah. I'm not dead yet, Chad. I'm not dead yet.
How old are you now?
36.
Oh, you still got time.
Yeah.
You
And
are you pretty
I got
pretty
Danielle
healthy?
Martina on my side. Good.
Yeah, she's good about fixing and knowing all that stuff. See, that's an interesting thing too, because when you worked with disabled people,
Mhm.
I didn't get my degree in physical therapy, but I worked in physical therapy for a long time.
Mhm.
And it's interesting when I got into powerlifting, some of the things that I carried over. And I think that is what helped me get through all of it with so few injuries. I mean, basically, I got a lot of torn muscles, never torn a ligament, never torn a tendon, have no joint issues. The last time I had an MRI on my hip, the doctor asked if he could keep the MRI, and I go, yeah, I don't care, but why? He's like, because you squat like 1,200 pounds and you have the hips of a 20-year-old. He goes, all my clients that go, I can't lift. He goes, I want to show them this and tell them if they do it right, they can. But
Yeah.
I think I had a lot of carryover from working with patients and even into coaching. It was funny. My brother's a horse trainer,
Mhm.
and I've actually went with him to work with some horses before and to work with riders and stuff. And I'm like, man, like he does so much stuff similar to what I do. And it was really weird. But then it kind of makes sense. And I go, I was really good at motivating patients. Like I had a reputation for if they had patients that had given up and didn't want to do anything, I would be the only one in the building that could get them up and exercise. And so I think there was a transfer to into coaching to like I have an innate ability to see those things or something. And do you think that you working with disabled people kind of gave you a new perspective even when you came back to training athletes and stuff?
So what I gained from working in disability rehab was more so on the communication side and the soft
Mm-hmm.
skills side because I wasn't actually the one doing the rehab. I was more of a coordinator. So I would coordinate treatment plans, but on the side of coaching people through barriers and communicating with them in a way they could understand, you go from motherfucking a kid in the weight room to trying to convince a woman that it's okay for her to go outside
Mm-hmm.
and that walking to the mailbox is a win for her that day. It's two completely different populations. And I was very lucky to get a lot of continuing education through the company that I worked for, um, to the point where I felt like communication and empathy were a big area of weakness. And because of my work with that population, it's now a very big strength of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that's what I gained more than anything than, the training related stuff for sure.
I think that though that's one of the problems I have with a lot of the studies and statistics. And I was reading one study about volume the other day, and in it said we used advanced lifters, and then later in the study it said the average squat was 315, and I'm like, when did a 315 squat become an advanced lifter?
Bro, that's like the top 1% of the population.
Really, 315? Wow. But I think like I tend to get deeper and deeper into the mental side of everything. And I mean, I've researched placebo studies, and I
Mhm.
mean, there are some medical placebo studies where like 70% of the people that got the real pill saw results, and 69% of the placebo study
Oh, for
saw
sure. Yeah.
results. So I'm like, you can give me all these studies, and like you said, it's averages. I'm like, you can give me all these studies, but like when they go, this is the right way, the study says this, like it drives me nuts because I'm like, no, you have to, it depends on the person.
Context.
And it depends on the genetics of the person. Even like, if you go back to the Eastern Bloc stuff, there's certain ones that they picked these genetic children out. And if you're not a genetic person and you want to run a program that's designed for the genetic top, it's probably not going to work for you.
Well, even then, they also chose programs that weeded out weakness. So
Yes.
the only people that were able to complete it were the genetically gifted and the ones who could complete it.
Yes.
So it's like a attrition, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean to be rude, but I do have a hard stop. I got to get ready for another meeting. I really enjoyed being on this podcast.
Quickly, give me where people can follow you.
Yeah, for sure. So you can reach me on Instagram at Paul Oneid or www.masterathletic.com or www.coachescorneru.com. Anything related to coaching, mentorship, education, you can find all that on my Instagram and my link tree. So
yeah, I was going to say, just follow him on Instagram and then go to his link tree. He posts a ton of cool shit on Instagram that I really enjoy. And Paul, thank you so much for being on. It was awesome. I would love to have you back again.
Dude,
I think we could probably talk for hours past this. And I think it's good stuff for people to hear.
I'm glad I got to spend Valentine's Day with you.
Yes, that's true. Oh, this is Valentine's Day. This is my highlight of my day now. Definitely.
There you go. All right, brother. Have a great one.
Thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit couragebarbell.com. Until next time.